Some believe it arrived on a meteorite. Others claim it began in a warm pond on early Earth. In 1953, one scientist shook the world when he proposed an answer: primordial soup. But was his theory correct? Now, researchers from Denmark to Hawaii are racing to understand how life may have begun by creating it themselves. Each hopes to be the first to find the origin of life. Three teams of scientists from around the world are attempting a revolutionary first, producing life from scratch in their labs. Dr. Steen Rasmussen is the team leader in Denmark.
That is very good.
We mix organic and inorganic components a little bit like the alchemist in the old days trying to make gold. We try to make the materials self-organize in such a way that it's able to become alive.
In Hawaii, biochemist David Deemer believes the key to life is to find out if DNA can assemble on its own, outside of a cell.
And if we're really lucky, we will see some synthetic reactions go on, where small molecules join up to become larger molecules. And that would be the most exciting result of all.
And at Harvard, Dr. Jack Sostak's team is trying to install a working genetic code into a primitive cell.
We know how to make these go through multiple cycles of growth and division. So really the big step is combining that with some genetic material that's also replicating at the same time.
Theirs is a race to unlock the very key to our world.
From just the fact that this rock is so rich in carbon that it's completely black, that tells us that the life was efficient, it was good at producing organic matter. And the only way you can basically do that in the open oceans would be if you live up in the upper few meters of the ocean and you use solar light for energy by some mechanism of photosynthesis.
And photosynthesis, a process that transforms sunlight into food, indicates advanced life. So, scientists believe the first life likely goes back even further, to nearly 4.4 billion. After a rogue rock the size of Mars hits early Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, it expels molten rock into Earth's orbit. Then, in just 1 month, that orbiting molten rock sticks together, forming our moon. Not long after, meteorites bombard planet Earth. They carry hydrous minerals, compounds that release water upon impact, and form early Earth's oceans, providing the earliest opportunity for life. Before life, there was no oxygen or ozone layer in Earth's atmosphere. Instead, Earth's non-oxygen or reducing atmosphere likely held some ammonia and methane, water vapor and hydrogen from evaporating water, and lightning due to friction from the heated gas. In 1953, chemist Stanley Miller designed an experiment approximating those conditions to see if life could emerge. He zapped a beaker full of early Earth's likely atmosphere: methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor, with a bolt of electricity.
In contact with each other to have any further chemistry, and water is an excellent solvent. So it dissolves things, and once they're in solution, just by chance they're going to run into each other, and then perhaps there could be further chemistry take place.
So, did Miller create life? Not exactly. But he did create brown primordial soup, the chemical goo that pooled on early Earth before life. His electric spark broke chemical bonds in the gas. Eventually, those bonds recombined into hydrogen cyanide along with amino acids, the smallest molecules or building blocks of life. Amino acids link together to form all proteins in living things. As humans, we all share the same 20 amino acids. Miller created 5 of those 20 amino acids necessary for life. It was a first, and it launched modern scientific efforts to create life in the laboratory.
Miller started the whole field of what we call prebiotic chemistry, the chemistry that takes place naturally that produces the compounds essential for life as we know it.
But it didn't take long for the scientific community to raise questions about Miller's experiment. Many believed his premise was flawed. Early Earth didn't have an ozone layer to keep out the sun's ultraviolet rays. So its atmosphere couldn't have held large amounts of methane and ammonia. More than a half-century after Stanley Miller first creates amino acids, the building blocks of life, his colleague, Dr. Jeffrey Beta, makes an incredible discovery.
We found this old dusty cardboard box and opened it up, and inside this box were all these other little boxes with little vials that were clearly labeled and associated with his 1953 experiments. It was just stunning that I'd known him for 40 years and he'd never ever mentioned this, and he'd never mentioned it to anyone.
Miller had preserved the brown primordial soup, the amino acid results of his experiments, for over 50 years. Then Beta uncovers something even more remarkable. These results are from a second, unpublicized experiment of Miller's. Miller had met the doubt of his colleagues head-on. Initially, most agreed that methane, ammonia, and hydrogen gases existed on the early Earth. But methane and ammonia could not exist in large amounts because of the sun's ultraviolet rays. So how, then, could amino acids have formed? Miller's answer? Volcanoes. Scientists believe volcanoes formed the first land amid early Earth's vast ocean 4.4 billion years ago. And like Hawaii today, volcanic islands create their own microclimates. So when their volcanoes erupt, they spew methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor into a plume. That plume, along with ash, creates friction, causing lightning. The lightning then zaps the gases before they're destroyed by the sun. The problem wasn't in his results. It was with the limited technology he used to measure his results. So measuring with today's modern technology, it turns out the results are actually extraordinary.
What we found is this volcanic apparatus, as we call it, produced a larger variety and in some cases more amino acids than the classic experiment.
It was a major breakthrough. Yet even if amino acids were created near ancient volcanoes on early Earth, that doesn't explain how they ultimately bonded together to form a living organism. Today, that process is performed primarily by one complex molecule, deoxyribonucleic acid. We know it as DNA. Its double helix shape resembles a spiral staircase. The steps are made from base pairs of nucleotides. That's where DNA stores all the information necessary to build life. The earliest type of DNA was possibly one that could self-assemble, meaning it formed on its own outside of a cell. And if biochemist Dr. David Deamer can figure out how that happened, he could unlock the secrets of first life.
Imagine something over 3 feet long containing 3 billion base pairs. That's the amount of DNA in every cell of the human body. It's really quite extraordinary. So we're trying to figure out the simplest structure of a nucleic acid that would have the properties of DNA, the ability to replicate itself, the ability to be synthesized right from the start.
One likely candidate is ribonucleic acid, or RNA. RNA assists DNA in the building and replication of proteins in all life. But RNA's structure is simpler and more robust because it has just one strand of nucleotides instead of two. At the foot of an ancient volcano, deep in the primordial soup, perhaps some early form of RNA self-assembled, then helped amino acids to bond together. Without the ability to self-assemble, first life could never have emerged.
Darwin himself suggested maybe life began in a warm little pond. Well, I would change that to a hot little puddle, because we now think that the early Earth was volcanic and that puddles would be pretty hot in the 70 to 80 degree range.